So the recording is starting. So welcome, Madam KB Audra, to my YouTube channel. So when I do this, you have like YouTube channel, you gotta show me yes, yes. I love it when people cooperate. So today I have Audra here with me, and we're gonna talk about sex. And
Yes.
before we go into that topic, I do want to give a small introduction about Audra, and I'll leave her introduce herself as well. So Audra is someone that I love so much. I remember the first time that I saw her, it was at um the church. I can't remember the name, but the church in Grand Cas. And I saw her, she went on the stage, she spoke, and she moved so gracefully. And she just had this, I don't know how to explain it, like um um I said grace, but you just look like someone, like I just wanted to be
I have
around
one.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, you just had this thing. I think I've heard KB mention it when he saw you in church too. And it's the same thing that I saw. I was like, this woman is you're a beautiful person.
Thank
Outside, I
you.
was like, wow, she's beautiful. But on the inside too, she just walked like with such a smile. And sometimes you just see people and they just look like, I don't want to say like what they're going through, but they just look like kind of miserable at times.
Hmm.
But like you just look so peaceful. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this woman. And that was the first time I saw her. So since then, I just slide up in her DM every now and again to send her some messages, because I really do, and I appreciate her just by like the way she composes herself, how she speaks to people. She has this very soft part of her, but she's really like she tells it like it is. And one of the things that I love most about you is that the way you love your husband.
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
in your relationship, but the way that you're around him, the way you look at him, the way he looks at you,
Hmm.
when you're sitting next to him, one a body part have to be on, like if your
Yes,
hand
touch.
in on him, if your legs in touching, if in something like and it's
Yes.
beautiful to see, because oftentimes I go in. Oftentimes we see marriage and we don't really understand
Hmm.
how it is to love someone, or to see people that have been married like show that love. Because like I people watch, and I read body language, and I can see like if something going on, I can see if you love that person, you want to be around them. And I
Hmm.
really love how you display that between you and your husband. So that was my spiel on Audra, and I'll leave her introduce herself.
Yes. So, hello, everyone. My name is Audra Cabey, and I am a woman, and I'm an international woman. I, I call myself, I'm an international woman, and I have been married to Mr. Dominic KB for 3 beautiful years. And
Wow.
yeah, it's been a ride, and
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't change that at all. I am an educator. I
Mm-hmm.
teach second grade currently.
Mm-hmm.
I am a part of the alternative church where I serve there under our apostle Castel Abraham
Big up
as
to Castel.
Dr. Castel. I serve there as a minister. I teach, and also I am a part of the worship team. And
Amen.
it is such a pleasure for me to be on this today with Christine, because Christine is such a beautiful girl. Even when I see her father at his job, I mention her
I
name.
know, my dad, I didn't know that. He never mentioned that to me.
Yes, when you graduated, I was like, oh, my girl
Oh,
graduated. And I know at first he was like, for him, like, how you know, but I knew your father from shopping frequently there. And so
okay.
I guess when I mentioned your name, for him, it was like, you know, my godson, But you're so amazing, Christine.
Thank
You're so
you. Thank
amazing.
you.
I love women. I love to speak to young women. I love to be around young women, to gather, to share. And so it's a pleasure knowing you and your squad.
Oh, thank you, squad. Big up to Kingdom Sisters.
Big up.
Um, so Audra is like she's hilarious. Like her introduction alone shows what kind of person that she is. So like I said, we're going to talk about sex. I tried to think of questions to ask, and I
Mhm.
couldn't really find the questions, to be honest. So I'll let you take the floor when it comes to starting to speak on it, and then as we go along I'll ask questions. The first thing that I have here is, when did you start thinking about sex differently? Then that's all my mind could bring up. But the reason why I brought you on to speak about it is because, like, we've always had, growing up, we've had this perversion of what sex is, and it's very taboo, and we don't really, well, we weren't well educated about sex. Growing up in the church, or even if you
Correct.
weren't brought up in church, it was more of don't have sex with till sex till wait till marriage until you have sex. That was what the talk my mom had with me. Don't have sex. If you do, people are going to start, the guy gonna start watching you. Basically, you're going to lose respect from the person that you have sexual intercourse with. And I was like, okay, I ain't having sex until I get married, but so, so I can leave you start talking, and then I'll interject.
Yeah, so sex is something that is absolutely beautiful, and it was on God's mind when he
Yeah.
created mankind. It was on his mind because sex comes from him. And
Mm-hmm.
even when you look at our genital area, obviously he had to have it in mind because the man's penis fits perfectly into a woman's vagina. So
Mm-hmm.
if it was just for procreation purposes, it wouldn't feel so good.
Period.
So I mean, part of it is definitely having that pleasure because a woman is not going to spend her entire lifetime just popping out babies.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also for enjoyment and
Mm-hmm.
for closeness between a husband and a wife. And
Mm-hmm.
so the perversion of sex came in through mankind, through human
Mm-hmm.
beings. And sex is not the only thing we've perverted. We've just perverted so many other things. Basically, whatever mankind touches becomes perverted. But when it from its inception, it was never meant to be that. It was meant to be something enjoyed between spouses, between a husband and his wife, to explore each other's bodies and to be free with that nakedness, that physical nakedness. And so what happens is what was supposed to happen as well is that as we grew into being one with each other, and
Mm-hmm.
that emotional nakedness opens up, that spiritual nakedness, that mental nakedness, just being naked with each other in terms of intimacy and how we feel about different things, that was supposed to heighten our sexual encounter. So, sex is something that was always meant to be beautiful. And it was the same thing with me growing up. Ain't nobody talking to you about sex except to tell you don't do it. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
So
that's the
for
most.
you growing up, it was the same thing, but when did like the mind shift happen, and it was like, okay, it's a beautiful thing. Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, I know that sex is awesome. Of course, in the covenant of marriage is even awesomer.
Yes.
But like when were you like when did it click that the what was being taught to us is not how it should be? And like I feel like you're kind of an advocate for sex, like you speak on it freely. I sat
Yeah.
down next to you in church, and I asked you I asked you some questions, and you were just like boom boom. I was like
Yes. Yes.
and I
Yes.
love it. I love it because you make it comfortable for people to speak about, because as you mentioned, God didn't make it for it to be taboo. He made it for us to enjoy it again
Mm-hmm.
in the covenant. So of course us doing it outside, that was a whole thing on its own. But when did that mindset change for you? And he was like,
I would have to say, maybe when I became 30, my early 30s, I would
mm-hmm.
say. I'm somebody, as you know, I speak freely about sex. Sometimes my mother is sick of me because I always find a way to slide it into conversations, and my mother would be like, "Oh my
Oh
God,
my gosh. Wait, did you always feel comfortable speaking to your mom about sex? Like when did you?
I would say late 20s, 30s. I would say, because my mother, she never really spoke to us about sex other than don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
don't do it. Or she would let us know that, hey, I don't have as many children as I had. It could be difficult. She always wanted better for us. And so that's as far as the conversation extended. But as I was, coming into my own, getting into my stride and understanding
Mm-hmm.
womanhood. And, in my 20s, I was still trying to figure out um, where am I going? What are my likes? What are my dislikes? So I learned how to date myself in my 20s, especially when I started living on my own. I learned myself. I would go to restaurants to eat by myself. I've traveled by myself. I would go to movies by myself. And so as I learned myself and what I like, what I didn't dislike, because masturbating is something that I also did when I was single. You have all these feelings, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all that I'm feeling? And
Mm-hmm.
cold showers were not working. And it's like, I need to figure out,
What going on? What to do?
I need to settle what's happening here in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
so on my own with the Holy Spirit, he would guide me through so many different things about myself. And as I evolved as a woman and I came into my own, I came to realize that, hey, these are great conversations to have. And so we would frequently speak to our youth about sex. That's something with Castle and Edlin were the youth leaders, and we were a part of the youth board. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something we frequently spoke to our young people about sex, because we didn't have that. And so coming into my 30s, coming into my womanhood and loving my womanhood, I would speak to my mother up until this year. I was still asking her if she ever had outdoor sex. she, she would keep evading that question. And finally, she got set up with me asking, and she finally told me. And so I really would say in my coming into my 30s, that is when it really shifted for me, my
Okay.
understanding.
Okay. Two things you mentioned, and I want to go back to that.
Mhm.
Learning yourself, right?
Yes.
And I do believe that is a very important thing to do. And sometimes we
Mhm.
get caught up in wanting to be in a relationship. From like primary school, you have your little
Yes.
boyfriend, you have your first kiss, everybody thinks it's a big thing. You go to high
Mhm.
school, everybody couple up, everybody boot up. So
Yes.
we don't really in our culture, even like being brought up, being single is something that's kind of frowned upon. Like you don't have a boyfriend. Like to
Hmm.
this day, people will still be surprised if I were to when I tell them that I'm single. Why you single, beautiful girl? Because I don't want to be with anybody that just want to be.
That's right.
And being so one thing one of my sisters told me was that, Christine, go date go on take yourself on a date. I was like, she said, yeah, I used to go to the movies, I used to do this and I used to do that. I was like, okay,
Yes.
I'll give it a try, because I've always wanted to go to the movies on my own. I'm a very like to myself person, but
Mhm.
like going out by myself would still be kind of strange. It's like, what people are going to think. So the
Hmm.
first time I did it, I went to the beach. I jumped on the bus, walk, went to the beach, and a guy from my old church saw me. He was like, where you going? I said, beach. He said, by yourself? I said, yeah. He's like, no boyfriend or nothing. I said, no. I went, I sit down, I just enjoyed myself. I tried to read a book, but I just love being by the beach. So I just sat there in my stillness, just enjoying being there.
Mhm.
It was such a peace. After that, I went to the restaurant, and the restaurant I went to, I usually frequent it with our mutual friend, Naini.
Yes.
So when I went there, the girl was like, where's your friend? I said, she in here. She said, how come? I said, just so. So the following day, the next time I went there with Oneida, she said, yeah, I saw your friend there the other day. And she was looking so sad. I was like, no,
Hmm.
right? But these are things that, and even traveling by yourself is something that I enjoy doing, because I
Mhm.
could just pick up myself and go. I only have to worry about
That's right.
myself.
That's
I
right.
went to Atlanta by myself. the peace. It was a little anxiety because I had to learn the place by myself. But after the first day, I got used to, okay, this is what I have to do, and this is what, ask questions. You learn, you meet new people, you know what you like, what you don't like. And the problem is that sometimes we go into relationship not knowing who we are.
That's right. And that's a dangerous thing. That's a dangerous thing. And so even when I met KB, I knew my likes and my dislikes already. I knew what I was willing to accept, what I wasn't willing to accept. And so it makes it so much easier that when you come into that womanhood, you understand who you are as a woman. You understand where it is that you're heading, because when you meet this person, you need to know if you're heading in the same direction, and if you can submit to his vision for where you all are heading. And so when I met KB was like, this is where I'm heading, and you fit in there perfectly. So it's so
That's a man
important
that
to know
knows what he
yourself.
wants.
Oh yes, he knew exactly what it was he wanted, and he got it.
Okay. I love it. Okay, so the next point that I wanted to talk about was masturbating. So okay, so for us, we didn't always, okay, masturbation, sex, we don't talk about it. And I'm glad that you mentioned the point of, you had these feelings and you didn't know, what to do, and you was trying to figure out what it is. Because sometimes in our faith journey, we think that we can't, just because we love God, we're not supposed to feel these feelings that are very human, like what to do with it. During our cycle, it is even go like it intensifies. So I'm happy that you brought that point, because I know when I started my journey, I threw away I stopped doing stuff. So I threw it. I was like, okay, I'm on this new journey and I'm not going to do stuff anymore. So I'm going to throw that thing away. Boom. I still had those feelings. So what does a young person do when they are on that faith walk and they have these real true feelings?
Listen, it's a day by day journey, because there are times when you absolutely just feel like you need to have that release. And so you find yourself doing this to get the release. And then right after that, you start to feel also guilty. And you feel so condemned. But number one, remember something: God does not condemn you. If you feel any condemnation, that's from the enemy, that's from the devil, that's not from you. He's weighing down on you based on your actions. Oh, look what you did. And you say you're this, you say you're that. Guess what? I'm still this. I'm still what God says I am. I'm still who God says I am. But I have these feelings in my body and I don't know what to deal with, how to deal with them. And so I myself, many times I have masturbated during my
Singleness.
life, in order to feel that release, whether I was stressed, whether it was coming up to the time of my period, or I was ovulating or whatever, and I just needed that release. And so what I would say is that for some people, it's not even an issue. Some people, that's not something they do, that's not something they struggle with, whereas for others, that's the case for them. And I came to realize that the church is not the church is at a place where, and I'm just speaking generally, where we're not at a place to meet people where they're at with their struggles. The most we can say to people is, don't do it. God is not pleased with this. And that's it. They kind of just leave you on your own, sink or swim. If this is the life you want to live, they'll have you step down, whatever. And it's just like, hold up, wait a minute. This is a natural thing my body is going through. So I would take myself, for example. I used to enjoy reading and romance novels. I would go to the library and I would take 10 books at a time, the maximum. But there were romance novels, there were details in there of sexual encounters. And then it came to a point where the Holy Spirit had to tell me, this is not helping you. Because when you read these things, your body is going to react naturally to it, because that's the way our bodies are made up. Your body's going to react naturally to it. And then what? where is that gonna go? Where are those feelings gonna go? You have to find a way to deal with it. And so I stopped reading those books. If you struggle with it, probably movies that have a lot of sex scenes, you're probably going to have to avoid those until you're at a place where, you know, you can see it, and even though your body might have a certain reaction to it, where you can say, okay, I'm not going to masturbate over this is a natural part of life, whatever. So there were some practical steps I had to take not to expose myself to certain things until I became stronger and was like, okay, I can overcome this. All it's going to be is discipline, mama. Prayer is not going to take it away, because guess what? Next month, you're going to be horny again. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It takes discipline to say, you know what? I feel this in my body right now. I really want to do this, but I'm going to decide not to do it. That's what it's going to be. And then when you look at the scripture says that discipline hurts. It never feels good, because I right now I got a heat. I need that heat to be doused. I need to do something to help me out here. But, you know, it's just taking those practical steps. And if you fail, it's not for you to hang your head low, like, oh my God, I failed. God is going to whip me. I know God still has a job for you to do, and you need to get up and get it done. So next step along the way, we're going to try and do it better. God is patient. He's long suffering with us. It's man that kind of just condemns and you hold things against yourself.
Yeah. So you mentioned oh my gosh, and I should have taken note of what you just said. Give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
Okay, so I got it already. So you mentioned the basically catering to that person. For example, if someone struggles with
drinking.
Yes. How you know I was going there? So for example, if someone struggles with that, you wouldn't encourage them to be around persons that do it, or go to the club, or be in that environment. It's the same thing when it comes to sex as well. Some people, they can watch a sex scene, it doesn't do nothing to them, and they don't want to do anything. But you can see, but for some, just seeing somebody kiss somebody is a big thing for them. So knowing what it is, knowing yourself is one thing, but the church, in one aspect, I kind of understand where they're coming from, because they're talking to the masses, they're talking to a whole group of person. So instead of saying, oh, maybe you can do this, or you have to have the discipline, they just tell you plain out, don't do it. Don't do it. And I like the fact that you mentioned practical steps that you can take in order for you to become disciplined in doing it. Not that you just stop. Well, it can reach there eventually. Sometimes you have your slip-ups too, but that you become disciplined. So that sounds like there's a process that you have to take in order for you to reach there. So that's a great point that you mentioned, because again, that we think just because we're on this journey, we're not going to have these feelings and they're going to just go away. But especially guys, they are sexual beings, us women too, but like they see visually. And us, I know for me, during my menstrual cycle, like right before my period is like, Lord, I don't understand, like, what is it? Sometimes it's
and the thing of it is that you need to build that discipline, because you don't even want it to go completely. You need those sexual feelings for when you are in a relationship with your husband. You need those feelings. But beyond that, you don't want to spend the rest of your life struggling with something, or the rest of your singlehood struggling with something. The purpose is to overcome it, is to have it submit to you, to have your flesh submit to your spirit. So you reach a point where, hey, yes, I get horny and I can watch this sex scene in a movie without having to run and masturbate after, because I've matured. I've come to realize that, hey, this thing is not bigger than me, I am able to outgrow it. I am able to put it underneath my feet, watch a sex scene, watch a lady pass by in her tight clothes and not lust after her, not think about having sex with her. So basically, it's just about maturing and growing and training yourself to that maturity. That's what it is.
You said a lot. That
Yeah.
part when you train yourself, if a woman pass by and not lust, that's you really submitting, like not your flesh submitting under you. And we're a
That's right.
flesh being, you know, so that
Mhm.
takes work.
It takes
It's not
work.
gonna happen one, two, three. Like you have to be dedicated to reach to that point and understanding the reason behind it, because you lost, you fall under it, and you make these connections with people that it's a whole thing. It's a
Hmm.
whole thing. But
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to mention to, like, I wanted to hear your opinion on that, because I've heard persons mention, getting to know yourself, like
Yes.
what you like, what makes you do this and what makes you do that, and not depending on your partner to
Hmm.
know these things. And I'm trying to see.
And I want you to express yourself freely. I want you to use the words you need to use.
Okay. So one thing that I thought, like having sex, that my partner, because it happened
Mhm.
outside, so like before marriage, past life. So
Mhm.
basically I wanted my partner to be the one to make certain things happen for me. Like
Mhm.
I should know my body in a sense and be like, okay, babe, this is what I like or this is what I don't like. So for like these are the information that is out there. You should know your body, but how do you know your body if you can't do certain things to your body to be like, babe, this is what I like, this is what I
When
don't
you
like.
when you're doing it with him, because I never had sex with KB before,
Mm-hmm.
but the first time when you there are people you've never had sex with before, but when you start having sex with them, then you learn, I like it when you use your tongue this way. You're sucking a little too hard.
Uh-huh,
No,
uh-huh.
you have to communicate that. And so when KB never had sex with me before, I never had sex with him before, and now we're coming together, but you may know your body, but you don't know this other person's way of doing certain things. And so when KB would kiss me, if I want to be kissed another way, I would say, babe, I like it when you kiss me this way. And let me tell you, during sex, KB and I communicate. We be talking. Yes, we be talking during sex. Telling you full on conversations
Mm-hmm.
about what I like, or I would tell him, babe, I want you to kiss me going down my body, because maybe
Mm-hmm.
we don't always do that, but or he might say, babe, I want you to touch me while I'm doing this. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to communicate, and if you don't
Mm-hmm.
like it, you have to be able to say, I don't like it. That's how you develop your best sex. There are times that in the month where our nipples may be even more sensitive than they normally are. So the way that you handled them last week,
Mm-hmm.
you can't handle them the same way this week,
Take it
baby.
easy.
Yeah, you gotta take it a little easy. And so these two people coming together, it's not about pride. It's about me wanting to pleasure him and he wants to
Yes.
pleasure me. We want to have
Yes.
our optimal sexual experience. And so we
Yes.
have, if you're gonna tell your husband, I don't like it when you do that, and he's gonna get offended and mad at you and you still want to continue doing it, then he's
Mm-hmm.
selfish.
Mm-hmm.
He's selfish and he needs to be told you are selfish, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So you may not know what you like before, but
Mm-hmm.
and because maybe your first sexual experience, the guy did his quick thing, whatever, and then your husband comes along and he's a thorough lover, like KB.
Mm-hmm.
KB is a thorough lover. KB knows every single part of my body. And so you
Mm-hmm.
meet this man, and he is so attentive to every shiver, every sound that you make. And, he would ask, "Do you like that?" And I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yes, I like that." And so you experience something different than you ever did before.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate. That's all it's going to take, communication.
That's a very important point to make. Even, yes, we talk about the good, baby, I really like when you did that. But then um you have to be very comfortable in your relationship that you can tell them, babe, I did not like when you did this. Maybe try this instead, without having to bruise each other's ego. So having that communication, open communication, because I want to be able to do what pleases you, and I would like the same in return. Because a thought just came to mind too, because we sometimes we think that men just have, like, they need to do what they have to do, and we don't have to be pleasured as well, right? But we want to be pleasured, and I want you to do certain things a certain way, and I want to be able to, like, it's a give and take, not just
Yes.
you finish and then I just hear just okay. So it's important for you to communicate what you like and learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you, have that conversation with your partner. So how would you say sex is different between, like, outside of covenant? Yes, let's talk about that.
So what I will say is, before I move on to that, I want to say to you that open communication starts from the time you're dating. So because remember, you're building. Sex is basically that cherry on the cake when you get married. But
True.
throughout your relationship while you're dating, if you're unable to be naked internally, because that's where you're naked first, you're first naked with your insides before you become naked with your outsides. And so if you're afraid to, throughout your dating relationship, how you feel, you're not going to be able to do that for sex. You're not going to be able to do that. So you got to open up in here first. And when he does something or says something you don't like, to be able to communicate, I don't like when you do that. It makes me feel this way. And that's the time you work on it together. And you will see if this is a man that's very egotistical and he's kind of overlooking the way that you feel, he's going to be a selfish lover. He's not going to be a thorough sexual partner when you get married. And so if you see he's selfish or she is selfish from now, you better run for the hills. Run for the hills. And so talking about sex before and
Before
after.
you go into that, Audra, you said something I just wanted you to go, like, rewind to that, because it's very important for you to be naked from the inside before you can do it on the outside.
Yes.
That's a whole word. That's a
Yes.
whole word, because we tend to, the world, and because we don't know how it is to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I still struggle with being vulnerable, to be honest, because if I'm letting you in and being naked on the from the inside, that's me opening myself to you, my true feelings. And that is scary, because I want you to be able to take care of the information that I'm giving you. Like, you should be my safe space for me to open up to you.
Absolutely.
Right? But people, like, we don't do that, and we already, automatically take off our clothes and we do different things. We jump in a bed, while we can't even open up with our naked, like, our inside, but we can do other stuff. And that part is very important before we can jump to that part. So I can see how it's, if you have that for that connection already, and you have that open communication, that nakedness before actually becoming naked, there's no reason why you cannot be naked with your spouse when you go when you guys are having sexual intercourse. Because as you said, is the icing on the top. So that's a whole.
Absolutely. And that's something a lot of couples lack. I know personally of grown women who are not enjoying their sex lives with their husbands. Basically, it's just once he comes, that's it. He rolls off and he goes to sleep. And what are you left to do as a wife? What are you left to do as a woman? So it really starts from the beginning of opening up ourselves. What I don't like when you don't listen to me, or when I'm talking to you, you kind of overlook my feelings. Express yourself in that dating period, because then you know what you're going to be getting after.
Yeah.
Because marriage is not going to make it better. He's not just automatically going to change when you get married. He's not going to become careful of your needs or careful of your desires when that time comes.
Yeah.
If he's doing it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you expressing yourself, being a vulnerable, it's not always easy. You know, we're saying to express yourself, it's not always easy, but you don't just do it at the first on your first date with that person. So it's
Correct.
while you're collecting data, you seeing and you're watching who they are, how like certain things you tell them how they translate it, how they take it on, like small information, like the little things.
Yes.
The little things, like if I tell you I like morning text in the morning, and every morning you just try and make sure that you send me a morning text, or babe, you know, okay, you're
Yes.
considering what I like, so I go and do, you know, like the little things that you're doing to make that space safe for me. So don't go just opening up to everybody and just boom, but take your time and take that step when it's necessary. But as it's important for you to do so before that part. And it's sad for you to be married and you can't even talk to your husband.
My God.
You in the house with him, you have decisions to make and stuff, and you can't even talk to your husband. And sex is supposed to be fun for the
Yes.
both of us. So
That's right.
I can't even talk to you about that, so I can enjoy it and you can enjoy it, and we just have this, because God didn't create sex just, as you said, to procreate and just, you know, push out babies and stuff. It's made for you to
Enjoy.
yes. I look
Yes.
forward for my time, to be honest. Okay, so we're gonna go into the covenant portion. Yes.
Yes. So there's just always remember that once you share your body with someone and have sex with them, there's a connection that takes place. And so this is why the Bible speaks so clearly about joining yourself with a prostitute, or, you know, it's a sort of covenant that's being formed, because the Bible says that when you commit other sins, it's outside of yourself. But when you have that sexual sin, when you have sex with somebody who's not your spouse, there's that internal thing that's happening, or it's like against yourself. So sex is something that only God can fully explain how deep, how far, how wide a sexual encounter can go. He's the only one who can see that. Because look at this. For many women particular, what has happened within our society is that we've said so much that men are this or men are that they've sort of become that a man can have a sexual encounter with you and never look back at you. Whereas a woman will have sex and she has that connection. It's like, babe, now we are together. Okay, where are you going? Don't you know?
You're my boo.
I already married you in my mind. I've had 10 kids with you. And we look at it as women. From the time you could be sitting at your job and this beautiful man walks in and you just married him in your mind.
Yes.
That's how we're created as women. And so when you give your body to someone, it's not taken lightly. It's not
sex
taken
isn't casual.
It's yes, exactly. But for some people, that's what it's become. And that's where the perversion has come in. And with that, now you have unwanted babies. With that, now you have sexually transmitted infections. No, you have all kind of soul ties. And these are things that we don't want to talk about because we focus so much on pregnancy, because pregnancy is basically the sin revealed, so to speak. If a young girl is having sex, she becomes pregnant, then the sin is revealed. But an STI, I can hide that. Nobody knows that I was still having sex. A soul tie, I can hide that. Nobody knows that I'm lusting in my heart or something like that. But there is such a connection with sex, and the throughout the generation of people having sex or perverting sex, it has been lost along the way, or it has been skewed along the way, that we don't fully understand it. But God sees it from his heavenly perspective, because he's the author of it, and the creator of a thing knows exactly how far and wide this thing is, or it can go. And so within marriage, that is something that knits you together. When a couple stop having sex, they become like brother and sister in a house.
Roommates.
That intimacy is lost.
Yeah.
You lose a sort of connection. Even a softness with each other is lost. That way that we would cozy up with each other, that is lost along the way. Sex brings you back together. Sex allows you to explore each other's bodies in a way that is not shameful.
Yeah.
Now, if KB asked me to touch myself for him, there's no reason I should be afraid to touch myself in front of him. That's my husband. Why should I be ashamed of that? So it's just something that is just so beautiful and so worshipful about sex and expressing yourself. You're not afraid to express your voice, your sound, your voice levels, your face, your hands, your body gestures. And so before marriage, it kind of gets skewed. Then you have broken homes, you have children growing up in homes without their parents, you have baby mamas fighting. Listen, there is so much that comes out of using something outside of its purpose. There is
That's so good.
much that evolves from using something outside of
That's
its
so true. That's so true.
But
That's so true.
if you wait, so for instance, if let's say you've never had sex before, and now you and your husband are having sex with each other for the first time, you have nothing to compare that with. You can't say, oh, Michael was better than you, or Michael did this better than you. Now, God bless for many of those who've had sexual encounters before marriage, don't have that experience now. They don't have to worry about that. They're happy with the sex they're having with their husband, but that only comes through communication. When you like it a certain way, he's not doing it a certain way, or she refuses to do it a certain way, and you're not fully pleased. Now that leaves a door open that, hey, it was better before, or this other person understood me better, or this other person did it better. And so we want to avoid that in our marriages. We want to avoid that.
So you mentioned, for example, when someone didn't have sex before marriage, and this is their first sexual partner. Some people, they mention, I know it's gonna go back to communication, but like, how are you going to know that I like sex? How are you going to know? I have to taste it first before, test it first before I buy the car. So what would you say about that mindset? Because again, it comes from a perversion aspect. If you just communicate, if you have that, and I just answered my own question there too. But if you have that conversation, that nakedness beforehand, there's no reason why you can't have bomb sex with your partner. Maybe it might not be bomb at the beginning, but as you learn each other's body and you learn, okay, maybe she likes it this, oh, she like when I do that. You grow to enjoy, you learn, you grow to enjoy having sex with your partner. As I mentioned in this too, I remember there's a couple that I watch on YouTube, Kev on Stage and Melissa Fredericks. So I love them. So with her, she grew up in the church and super church and whatnot, and she had to, for her, she had to learn to enjoy sex with her husband, because she's always had the good girl mentality in her head. So for her to be even open with her own husband was a struggle that she had. So even going back to what you are doing right now, just basically educating and making it a comfortable conversation for people to have, for us to speaking to the youth is important, so that we can normalize sex is good. Sex is great.
Yes.
but it's not meant to be done outside of marriage, because there's a lot of things that is connected to it being outside. You know, having a strong family is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a grand thing, and once the enemy sets foot in that, in the family, and it's like start to crumble, it's easy for him to maneuver and do what he wants now.
Yes.
A family is a strong foundation. Once you have that, it's
Hmm.
hard for him to infiltrate and do anything that he wants within that union. So
Hmm.
and the thing is, sex is such a beautiful, it's such an amazing thing that people have a difficulty refraining from it. But it's for your best that, you know, God is calling you, you know, not to do it. There's a reason why he's telling you to wait until you have your spouse in order for you to um you know, enjoy that part of life.
I will say also that community is important. Having
Mm-hmm.
that another person that you can speak to, because for instance, whether we want to say admit it or not, in a lot of cultures or in a lot of families, it's not going to be normalized to have to speak, or in certain churches, it's not going to be normalized to
Yeah.
explain to a young woman or to a young man what to expect or what to do when they get married.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be very awkward at first for them, or not be that enjoyable. And so, you know, when you don't know what it's supposed to be like, but what the experience that you're having with your spouse is not enjoyable, you're going to have a negative view of sex. You're not going to want to do it with your spouse. It's like, God, whenever
Is
he
a
comes,
chore.
yes, it's a chore. I mean, he's thrusting too hard. He doesn't understand that this my uterus right now, my vulva is sensitive. It's
Mm-hmm,
bruised.
mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
you're not sure. So when you have people who are skilled, I would say, maybe not skilled, but you have someone that you can go to and trust and say, hey, I'm having sex with my wife, but she doesn't seem to enjoy it. What could I be doing wrong? And then
Mm-hmm.
this person can ask you, what have you been doing, or how can you do it better? And as a woman, you know, you can go and say, I'm to this older person or this peer, I'm not enjoying sex with my husband. My vulva is bruised. He sucks too hard. He's too rough. What am I supposed to do? How can I talk to him, or to please him better, or for him to please me better? You need to have these people here who are able to explain to you what to do, how to
Yes.
communicate, because
Mm-hmm.
communicating about sex, if you've never done it before, it can be hard, because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what to do. And so you learn along the way, hey, how to communicate with your spouse about it. You're sucking a little too hard. Can you suck a little softer?
No, you
Um,
don't know how, man. Stop, 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 stop. It's how you it's how you communicate too. You know
yes,
it.
it's how. And as a woman, you have to know your body. You have to know what's going on down there. What are you using in
Yes.
your feminine area? What may be irritating you? Um, Even for if KB, for and before KB and I have sex, we brush our teeth. He has to use mouthwash, because if you're gonna perform oral sex on me, that's a sensitive area.
Mm-hmm,
Okay, and
mm-hmm.
bacteria from your mouth gets in there, and then it starts to itch, or it's so we keep it clean, because if you're going to perform oral sex, your mouth needs to be clean for that area, because that area is sensitive. So as a
Mm-hmm.
woman, knowing your body, knowing what
Yes.
irritates you, knowing what doesn't. There are certain times I'm very sensitive, so KB might have to take his time, whereas there's other times it's like boom, 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 boom. Done, baby, get it done. You know, so communicating with other women who are discreet, who aren't gonna go and say, oh, you know, she not enjoying her sex with her husband. Now look at her, she laughing there, but she well horny there, she not satisfied.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
no, we don't want that. We want these communities, these small communities where women can come inexperienced and gain that knowledge that they need to make their sex lives better and healthier.
I like that you said a discreet community. Not just discreet, but a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
that you're able to come and talk about, you know, the struggles, these type of, because it's talking about stuff like I'm still exposing myself to you. So the information I'm providing to you, you know, I would like for you to protect it and see how I can better my
Yes.
marriage. But I could even go more in depth into that part, but I won't. One thing that you mentioned too was worship. Marriage is like
Mhm.
worship, and I wanted,
Okay.
I remember when the alternative was having a marriage talk. And
Mhm.
I think I was the only no, me and Shaniqua, I think.
Mhm.
We had like one or two, three young people there amongst all of these married people, and they were talking about, you guys were talking about how sex is good, and sex
Yes.
is you know, is a way that you worship God. And I was like, okay, I ain't having sex, so I don't know how this is like, you know, how what am I supposed to do when I feel this way? But I liked how you brought it across that God is the only one that knows the depth of it, and
Mhm.
it's really a way of worship, bringing worship to God, you
Mhm.
know. I have a married friend, a married couple that they told me that basically after they stop praying, they just came up for prayer, they all for some reason, you know, juices flowing, and now
Yes.
they want to get it on. I was like, okay. But
Yes.
it's interesting to hear that, because it's just cosigns the fact that God, he wants you to have sex with your spouse.
Mhm.
He don't want
Mhm.
you to like withhold, unless of course you're fasting, but he wants you to enjoy it with your spouse. So
Mhm.
great that you mentioned that. um Anything else that you would like to add?
I will just say, just to be open about it, not to hide it, because it is in the hidden that it becomes perverted, or it becomes something that's wrong, and it's really not something that's wrong. And I remember KB and we moved in together before we were married in order to save money. And so it was just like, yo, where we have all of these bills, because I had a company that closed down, and so we have all of these bills. And so we were getting married the July, and so we decided that from the January we would move in together, and in order to save money. And so we were very open about it. I spoke to my pastor, my then pastor, about it. I spoke to the youth leaders about it. I spoke to my circle of friends about it, let them know what our decision was going to be, because one thing we wanted was that accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was asked to step down from
Mm.
the leadership team. I was asked to step down. I was asked to take a seat. And then that is when I realized that the church is not ready to meet people where they are. And one thing that I said, I was like, but we're not having sex. And the response was the appearance of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I realized that the way things looked was more important to the church than the way that things are. And I'm so grateful that God is not like that, because the way that things are is more important to God than the way that things look. And so I am so grateful to our God for that. And KB and I were able to live with each other and not have sex, not because, oh, we didn't want to, or we weren't attracted to each other. No, but because we had an understanding of what sex is. KB and I spoke about sex all the time while we were dating. Sex is something we spoke about, our expectations of it, what we wanted, what we didn't like, what we liked, what we that was something that was open in our relationship. So it wasn't something we had to cover up, or when we were finally alone, oh my God, we finally alone. So no, it was open. And so we didn't give it power over us. We gave it no power over us. And so while we lived together, there was no sex. There was no sex. And it really pleased me to know that, hey, there are things in life that, though others may struggle with it, doesn't mean we have to struggle with it. Or because we struggle with it, doesn't mean you have to struggle with it. And though we're not going to be people who are rooting or saying, hey, or admonish, yes, move in before you get married. No, we're not going to tell that to other couples. But what we will say is that we will meet you where you are. If you need to do this, or you feel this is a decision you need to make, that we are willing to be two people to meet you where you are, to ask, why is this the decision you want to make? If it's a decision you have to make, how can we help you through this process? You understand? And I remember Etlin would say to me that there are times that she would wake up and she would feel like a little heat over her, and she would feel like it was for me, and she would pray for me, you know? And so I appreciate that and all, but it comes back as well to just that discipline in knowing what you want for your relationship, what you want for yourself, and the steps you're willing to take to get there.
A few points that I want to mention. When not everybody could do that,
No,
first of
no.
all, and it's like, as you mentioned, you wouldn't advise anyone to do it, because I personally can't imagine myself living with someone and not having sexual intercourse. And at this point, I don't think I have that discipline to do so. But from the church aspect to it, I think there's a scripture that says to flee from things that may seem like, from the look. So from the church's aspect, I get it, but it's how you approach certain things, like how I'm bringing this to you. I wasn't doing it behind your back. This is what this is. If you came to that to me with the perspective of the same way you mentioned, why, how, and is maybe even helping us find another option. Or are you gonna pay the rent for me for the 6 months, because would that be an option? And it's like, okay, Audra, I because I don't want it to look a certain way. Maybe we could do this for you, and maybe if they provide you with the option, it would have been different. But because when things are not how we think it should be, we are automatically want to just shut people out from the church, and that's how church hurt is built. Growing up in the church, I didn't like when young women, the youth would get pregnant, and usually all the focus goes on the woman, on the girl, and that they treat them some type of way, and they look at them some, the whole embarrassing, the whole shame comes. And I never liked the fact that that's how the church would treat someone, when all they need at this time is love. Not saying that you condone what happened, but regardless of that, I love you, and let's help you take care of it. Not to say, okay, you pop one out, okay, we're gonna take care of you so you could go do another one. That's not what it is. Because shame, it prevents people from going to church. It can't prevent you.
And you see what ends up happening, Christine, is that you will find that there are so many ministers who are struggling with things, and they keep it to themselves. Big name ministers, they struggle and they keep it to themselves, because they know too how they've reacted with things, and they know the church's reaction to things. And so we think that because things appear holy, that it's holy. No. I was living with KB. I didn't have sex with him. But when KB and I were living separate, who said we couldn't have sex?
True.
You're talking about two grown
people,
adults. I'm working, living on our own, driving our cars. You cannot deal with teenagers and adults the same way.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't work. And
that is true.
And so what happens a lot of times is that there's the means to have sex, so people have sex, and then there are times there's a means to have sex and they don't. They don't. So it doesn't, not because we're living together means we're having sex, and not because we're living apart means we're not. You understand? So you always have to have a conversation with people, meet people where they are, take their word for it, because that's what relationship is. we build that relationship that, hey, if somebody asks me a question, Audra, is it hard for you? That I can be honest and say, yes, it's hard for me because I know you have my best intentions at heart. But when that all that's concerning you is the appearance of things, then we have a problem.
Yes.
We have a problem. And it's the same thing with our teenagers under our own roof. It appears that they're going to school and studying and doing well. And next thing you hear, your child kills themselves because you were caught up on the appearance of things. We don't want that anymore. We want openness. Let's be open about the discussion of sex. Let's be open with our young people about what they're facing. Let's be open with grown women about what they're facing, whether you're enjoying or not enjoying your sex lives. What can I do to help you make it better? Ideas that I can give you to spice up and to do things differently. And so I love to have open conversations because speak the truth and shame the devil. Shed light, shed light.
Okay, so the relationship part is important in all of that, all of the scenarios that you mentioned, whether it's your child, a grown person that's in a relationship, a younger person that's in a relationship, because when you know the person, you know how to interact with them, you know what to tell them, and you know Audra, maybe she can be able to do that, live in a house because of her characteristic, and that's a you should have that safe space that I can tell you this and not feel offended, or okay, I could see how she would be able to how she would be able to sustain it. Okay, I'll co-sign and I'll support you in this one and that manner. So you cannot treat everybody the same way because we're all different human beings.
That's right.
So to wrap up, what would oh my god, excuse me, what would your last word be right now on the Zoom for the people, them, the youth, those that have these feelings and honey, and it's like, okay, like, what can you say to them? What would the last thing?
I would say to them that it's completely normal and it's not something to be ashamed of, that you feel horny, that you want to have sex. And my advice to you would be that I pray that you find someone that you can trust, an older person, because honestly, your peers, they're facing the same thing as you. They don't know what for you to do because they're leaning towards having sex, just giving in. And so I would advise you to find a mentor or someone you can trust who can help guide you through what you feel and really meet you where you are, because it's just going to take discipline on your end. God is not going to come in and stop you from having sex. He's not going to do that. He's not going to come and literally spread you and the boy apart that you don't have sex. No. The opportunities are always there. Everything is permissible, but everything is not beneficial. So it's really just going to take you having the help that you need, the accountability that you need to help you along your way. And for grown women, it's the same thing, then you can probably lean to a peer or another woman or an older woman and say, hey, this is what I'm faced with. What are the steps I need to take to overcome this? And I would say for the rest of us, have open discourse about it. Speak openly about it, whether it's to your children, whether it's to young people, whether it's to your friends. Speak openly. Be that safe space that people can come and say, hey, I'm struggling in this or that area. Men need it, women need it.
Yes.
You understand? And communicate with your spouse. Build that. If you and your spouse don't have that open communication about the way you feel about something, it has to start somewhere. You have to open up your mouth and say something. You have to, else he's not gonna know or she's not gonna know.
So mentorship, communication, community.
Yes.
These are the three things that you should implement. So finding someone that is trustworthy, and in those relationships, those communities, make sure you vet the person before you just
Yes.
open up. If they're
Yes.
happy in the relationship, don't go to someone that is miserable and that
Mhm.
you know that they can't help you. If they're
Good.
miserable in their relationship, ain't no way they're going to give you advice that going to
Sound
help you better
advice.
yours. Okay, don't do that.
Mhm.
So that take your time before you open up,
Mhm.
and yeah, we cannot do it on our own. We need each other,
We need each
and
other.
do the research if you need to in order for you to find what works for you. And open communication is very important in your relationship, the people around you. Just being honest with yourself too. Don't put up a
Mhm.
front, and it'll happen. So take your time when you reach that covenant, and you could have your bomb sex with your
Right.
husband and your wife, you
Yeah.
do so. But until then, let's work on being disciplined in that beautiful thing that God has created. So, Madam KB,
Yes.
merci beaucoup for coming on the Zoom and talking about sex. A very, very
My pleasure.
beautiful topic, I must say. I love the pointers that you give, and thank you for your time and your openness and
Mhm.
just you
Yes.
in general. And thank you guys for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see each other next time. Bye.
Bye.